All right, I would like to show you a couple of stitches today. So we're going to look at the running stitch, the whip stitch, and the blanket stitch. You can do this at home with a few pieces of paper and punching out some holes with a hole punch and a little piece of yarn. I've tied a little, or gotten some tape around that. I use duct tape, you can use scotch tape, any kind of tape. This was just a little bit more sturdy, I thought, but you can make this with, you might even just find some different things at home that you can make this, okay? So let's start with the running stitch. It's very simple, okay? So we're just gonna go up through there, down. Oops, I have a little knot in mine. Up, down, oops, and there you have the running stitch, okay? Next, I'm going to start with the whip stitch. So this one's a little bit different. Instead of going straight into that hole, we're going to go from the back. Now a lot of people get confused when they're doing embroidery or things like that. They actually do this when they need to be doing a running stitch, or they do the running stitch when they need to do that. So it's always important to kind of see, okay, is this going where it needs to go before you get all the way to the end? So if I did this one, made a little mistake, and as I'm pulling I see, oh, that's not quite right, okay? I can go back through the other way, pull that out, and just start again. Oop, not right. So this is something that's really fun to practice, all different kinds of stitches before we move on to using fabric and doing embroidery, okay? Now you can see too, oops, this one's a little bit longer than the rest of them. I can just start pulling that through. Oh, that's done there. And there we go. All right, last we're gonna do the blanket stitch, okay, which is one of my favorite stitches actually. So we're gonna start like the whip stitch, but then, oh, let me get the first one started. Oops. I did that wrong. Okay, so this first one, we're gonna go through the same hole for the first one. Okay, and we're gonna get this little loop here, kind of like the whip stitch, but before we tighten it, we're going to pull our thread through that hole. Okay, so then we're gonna go through again, and I have that loop, but before it closes up, I'm going to adjust that a little bit. Let's see, did I go through this way or this way? Before that closes up. Okay, and I'm kind of adjusting it. I'm kind of pulling it this way, straightening it out a little bit. All right, continuing down. And always putting my string through that loop before it closes up. Let's see, I think we might make it all the way to the end here. There we go. So we have our blanket stitch, our whip stitch, and our running stitch. You can use these different stitches in different shapes. So I've made a couple of fun shapes, and then also just some simple, you know, simple rectangle here. So you can make any shape that you want out of any kind of paper you want. And we can do all different kinds of stitches. So I can do a running stitch on one side. So maybe I could practice that stitch for a bit, but maybe I want to switch it up. Maybe I want to start doing a whip stitch. Oops. Back to a running stitch. Back to a whip stitch. All right, so you can even do different kinds of patterns if you'd like. I can do a blanket stitch as well. So I could do a blanket stitch all the way around. So again, remember blanket stitch, you have the loop. Okay. Running out of string here. Okay, so maybe try and make your own sewing practice and experiment with some different sewing.